Welcome back, my friends, back to the Midnight Hour Show. My name is Stephen Cambion, and I'll be your host tonight. We're going to be skipping our usual intro and some of those things just to save as much time as possible for our interview tonight. So here you go. This is a conversation between Michael Horn, the U.S. media representative for Billy Meier, and myself. Previous to this conversation, I had called Billy Meier a fraud, a fake, and I have to say, most of the people on my show that I identify as a fraud, a fake, or a con man will not come on my show, and no one from their camps will answer any questions. This is a rare thing, because in the Billy Meier camp is Michael Horn, the champion of Billy Meier's case. This guy really believes that Billy Meier is the real deal, and agreed to come on my show and answer any questions I have. Now I'm going to try to fit in all the questions I can. I'm going to do everything I can to make it a great interview and worthy of listening to. I don't have time for anything else, so let's just get right to it. This is me and Michael Horn, and I'm so excited to be able to take you guys with me. Let's do this. I am so pleased to finally get to speak to you in person.
Me too. All this silly stuff online, tweeting and all the rest, it's good to have a little direct communication. And I am going to be, I hope, delighted to try to give you some answers from my perspective and hopefully give you some resolution to some questions.
That would be excellent. And I thought that in the spirit of cooperation, we could start with something that I think we have common ground on before we get into the particulars of Billy's case.
Sure. What's that?
That is, I have previously spent a great deal of research time on the Bob Lazar case. And I am sufficiently convinced that it is all a money-making scam and has no basis in reality. One of the things that I learned, which I wanted to know if you agree with me, and that is that John Lear is on record several times saying that before Bob Lazar came out with his story, Gene Huff and Bob Lazar visited John Lear's home and did a real estate appraisal in exchange for all of the Billy Meier material, copies of all of the Billy Meier material.
Oh, really?
And yes, this was directly before, Bob Lazar came out with a story. Well, a bit of time before. And so...
in 1980s or what?
Yes.
Okay.
Before I guess, 88 when he came out with his story. So, but my point is, that's the first bit of evidence that Bob Lazar copied a great deal of things. Or that, to me, opened the door to the speculation that Bob Lazar copied a great deal of things from the Billy Meier case. But next we get to the sport model, which is exactly like Billy Meier's beam ship.
Yeah, it's a rendering of what they look like.
But it is exactly. The only difference is that Bob Lazar's model that he says he worked on had tiny seats for 3-foot-tall humanoids, or grays, as many people would say. And Billy Meier's, of course, would have, I suppose, would have seats or, for full-size humans, human-like humanoids.
Right. The other thing is that actually the earliest mention of Meier and Lazar that I recall seeing was in an interview in 1987 that George Knapp did. It's online somewhere. I could probably find it. But he did mention Bob Lazar and Billy Meier in the same story. And I should also tell you that Meier was asked some years ago about Lazar, and he said, well, you should be suspicious of anything coming out of America about UFOs. He says, just consider that Bob Lazar has not been bothered at all by anybody for supposedly releasing what would be probably top secret information if it's true. There's a paragraph. I have that somewhere too.
Yes, and I absolutely agree with you. And in my episode, I did like a Bob Lazar bombshells episode of my show here. I cited the same exact thing. If you're a real whistleblower, there's consequences. Look at Edward Snowden. There's been no consequences for him other than continually trying to make money from the story, despite him saying that he doesn't make any money. His book comes out, I believe, in November now.
Oh, really?
His autobiography, yes.
Well, Stephen, to be really,
I'm pretty sure he's getting paid for that.
I have not a lot of interest in what's would be contemporary ufology. I've by name called out all of these people. I have a video online, a presentation I did in Sedona, and I had a slide.
Yes, and I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to mention that to my listeners because I'm sure they'll find it of interest. It's called UFO, Liars, Fakes, Phonies, and I'm sorry, my tab here. Liars, Phonies, and Frauds Revealed. And I agree with most of what this article states, which is what I said. Maybe we have some common ground.
Well, I always feel that anybody who's truly looking for the real truth is on the same side I am, because that's what I'm interested in. You might find out, surprisingly, that I don't have any beliefs about anything in the Meier case. I can tell you what I think anybody can prove is true, and then I'm glad to always say there are things that are completely, as far as I'm concerned, speculative, because I have not been able to, nor have I seen, proof of positive one way or the other about certain things. I might certainly throw in my, if asked, well, would you bet on Meier being accurate? I'd say, well, of course, and I'll give you the reasons for it. But for what's called ufology, it's a terribly corrupt, unscientific, bogus field that is filled, again, with charlatans, fakes, phonies, liars, and frauds. And I named them when I presented at Contact in the Desert. Some of them were at that event. I don't think they were in the room with me, but I'll tell them to their faces. And just to beat that dead horse, I'll tell you why I take such a dim view of it. Every one of the people, Jeremy Corbell, David Wilcock, the odious duo with Corey Good, Emery Smith, Michael I could go through the list. Every one of them, Nick Pope and Richard Dolan, I have personally, over the years, either sent to, or in the case of Stephen Greer, in a public forum, offered him everything in the Meier case for free so that he could, stop parading those nice people who, sure, they saw something, but they have no idea what it is. Only that it's an unidentified flying. Here, Stephen, he wouldn't even look in my direction, wouldn't acknowledge it, wouldn't even decline. These people are phonies. Why? Because they've been presented with the singular truth of the thing that they all claim that they want to find. And not a one of them will even mention it, because to do so is to direct the attention there for people to check it out for themselves. Not a one of those people have one piece of evidence of anything of verifiable, non-terrestrial, if you will, manufacture. So I have zero respect for the so-called UFO community and all the clunks. And I know people don't like me in it, and it doesn't matter to me. I'm interested in finding out what the truth is. And quite frankly, I can give you the essence of the truth in 12 seconds and something I didn't even author. About 12 seconds.
Well, before we do that, I want to get back to that, but I wanted to finish just a point with Bob Lazar copying a great deal of his story, a great deal of material, shall we say. Right. I mean, I can prove that he got the material and watched it with Gene Huff, and went through it with Gene Huff, because John Lear gave copies of all the Billy Meier material, videos, pictures, printed materials, all right. John Lear had it all, and he had to copy it all to give to Gene Huff, and so there's also a mention of anti-gravity engine in the beam ships. I'm sorry, an engine which was powered by antimatter. This is Bob Lazar's design for how his ships were powered as well. So, what do you think of the connection or the likelihood that Bob Lazar copied a great deal of his story from Billy Meier's story?
Well, it's the same as it's true for people like the so-called, you don't hear much about him anymore, but so-called Andromedan contactee, Alex Collier, whose real name is Ralph Amagron and is the person that gave me Meier's 1,800 first pages of contact reports. It's the same thing. Open Minds TV, they acquired from Wendell Stevens or his estate all of Wendell Stevens' original stuff, and which included stuff on the Meier case. And what they do is they publish posters and photographs, and they then say it's all a hoax. I mean, this is a cesspool of just unethical behavior. Lazar, I'm sure, right in there, you just throw them all in there because they're all playing this game. It is simply disinformation, distraction, and profit, to me.
Well, couldn't the same be said for Billy Meier profiting off of his story?
No, I'll tell you why. I don't mean to jump too quickly, but here's the reality of it. A lot of people say, oh, cult this and that. And Billy Meier and his group, he has a group of people who, like him, operate within a fully functioning Swiss-certified non-profit publishing company, in effect. That's what it primarily is. FIGU disseminates Meier's writings. They do publish books. And every year, and because I've gone now 20 times, I didn't see it this year, to be honest, but every year at the monthly meeting in May for the international group of people that come from around the world to participate, and it's a small group, they show their financials, and it zeroes out, what came in, what came in from publishing, or what donations, and what were the costs. And when they publish their books, they publish very high quality books. They're not inexpensive. Now, you don't have to buy Meier's books in order to get the gist of his writings, because on several websites, including mine, including a very good one from Britain called Future of Mankind, they put up contact reports up into the 700s, which is now where we're at with those. And we have lots of articles from what we call the spiritual teaching on my site and on other sites. And there's other people internationally that put the information up for free.
Well, I do have a question, though.
Sure.
I mentioned to you that when I was a child, that was the time I first saw a Billy Meier photograph, and it was in a UFO book, and I cannot recall what the book was. I was so young when I first saw that.
Sure.
And one of the things I wondered looking into this again is all of the photographs and the films which are available online are very, very terrible quality. But I'm told that in the books they're really great quality, the books that you purchase. So what I guess what I want to know is, why can't we have an archive somewhere of the highest quality, rescan the negatives if the negatives are available, so that maybe a new generation of people can look at these?
Sure.
Instead of relying on the word of people from like the 1970s about their authenticity with their 1970s computers and equipment,
Right. Well, let me jump into that for you. First of all, there's some of the films are actually fairly good quality. They may be a couple generations down in some of the stuff that's online, and some of the photos, a lot of the photos, as a matter of fact, that you can just get, for free, are pretty good quality. But recently, what happened was, within the last 2 years, they digitized about 617 of Meier's, primarily but not exclusively, daytime photos. And this is very interesting where this goes, because they're in a book, and sure, it's an expensive book and all that, but somebody is certainly going to at some point scan those in or whatever, and that's fine. Billy is not all that concerned with UFO photos, and I know that firsthand. Now, in those photos, because the book, whatever book you saw when you were younger, didn't include some very, very important photos of Meier's. And so I do want to do, and I'll stay on this or any part of it you want. I want to throw in the 12-second proof.
Oh, sure, yes. We can definitely go to that. You say that you could sum up the truth of the Billy Meier case in a very short, succinct kind of way. I would love to hear that.
Here is a statement that I didn't author, but I want you to pay attention to it. And then, of course, I've got the full article, 6 pages online, and I'll explain all about it. But here's what's said by the person that wrote it. Now, the first question in everyone's mind should be, where did Billy Meier get a photo album with dozens of UFO photos back in 1964? Now, this turns out to actually be the foundational evidence, and it turns out to be ironclad. So let me fill you in, and I don't mind questions or challenges. You know, I make statements, and people go, oh, he's over the top. So let me say that.
I definitely want to get into some of this photographic evidence and the counter-arguments for some of it as well.
Sure, because you also don't know that there have been recent state-of-the-art computer analysis of some of the most interesting and controversial.
And that I have a background in computer science. I would be very interested in that.
Oh, perfect. And we're going to get all of this, and I'll be able to send you links on everything we're speaking about. So,
great.
Here's what I want to tell you about the paragraph that I read, the short paragraph. This was authored by a man who approached me 2.5 years ago on the phone. I didn't know him. An older guy, gruff, very intense. He said his name was Joe. He said, I'm an investigator. Are you Michael Horn? I said, yes, I am. Do you want to talk about this Billy Meier case with me? I said, sure, that's what I do. He said, now, are you sure? Because I think it could be a hoax. I said, yeah, well, let's go. For 3 months, we went back and forth every Saturday morning. The phone rang. It was Joe. It was about 8:30 or 9. And he'd ask questions. I could tell some of the answers weren't all that satisfying. Other ones were, interesting. So he disappears at the end of March. Then the phone rings at the end of August of 2017, and it's Joe. And Joe says, it's me, you still willing to talk to me? I said, yeah, of course. He said, okay, I'll tell you what I want to do. I want to tell you who I am, and then I want to tell you about your Billy Meier case. I said, well, fine. He said, I am formerly a top investigator with the USAF OSI, that's the United States Air Force Office of Special Investigation. We don't have anything to do with UFOs, but I have personally vetted, I supervised, investigated hundreds of people, in the room with them, vetting them and their credibility and their nature and their character, because a lot of these people could have their finger one day, some of them anyhow, on the nuclear trigger. These were people already in office, running for office, aspiring for higher office, military people. He said, and also we would ferret out moles and spies, and so he says, I know how to investigate, and I took very standard investigative procedure to the information of the case, but I did something a little different. I said, what? He says, I went right back to the 1964 India photographs, and that article published in that newspaper, the Delhi Statesman, in 1964, September. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, I researched, and that newspaper had been around for at least 100 years before, highly credible. The man who was the reporter, also solid credentials. There's Billy Meier's photograph in there. He's 27 years old. And this guy is telling how he meets this vagabond traveling around with a knapsack and an album with 80 UFO photos. And you've got about a dozen of those photos to this day, the same photos. So all these skeptics that are attacking your case, and that's what I just read you, that whole thing, the first question in their mind should be, where did Billy Meier, 1964, get a photo album with dozens of UFO photos taken back in 64? And by the way, with a Kodak Bellows camera, which my editorial here, my father had one, very, very clumsy thing to operate, no special effects possible with that thing. You were lucky to, when it got developed, that you had nice, good black and white photos. He said, look, and then I looked into this woman, Pobal Cheng, who at the time that Meier was in India was a young girl at the ashram of her grandfather, who was the head of the ashram, and that years later, in 1995 or 8, she came forward with another woman who had been there, and they gave a press conference, it's videotaped, and she had nothing to gain, neither of them did, by coming forward to tell what they had seen, that there were 100 eyewitnesses to oftentimes when these craft were hovering. There was a woman who walked the grounds.
I got one thing that bothers me.
Sure.
I'm sorry. One thing that bothers me, I've heard this story. In fact, I listened to her I listened to everything that I could find, this woman speaking about the case.
Right.
One thing that bothers me, though, when you say, well, hundreds of people witnessed these craft, there is not a single source of pictures or evidence of that taking place from anyone other than Billy Meier. Why has no one else independently taken a picture or provided?
There are 5 other photographers.
Because I've heard, Michael, I've heard you say that too. That hundreds of people witnessed this, or
Right.
a small group was with Billy when this beam ship came in and that beam ship. I keep hearing that all these people. We don't have a single photograph or from anyone other than Billy Meier, though.
I'll have to find them, but there are 5
And there's
other
also no independent.
There are 5 other photographers.
Okay, but there's also no other independent person outside of Billy Meier's circle that has ever taken a picture of the same craft.
No, that's what I'm saying. There was somebody in another country who did accidentally capture one of the craft and found out about Meier and sent the photo for him to see.
You're right. I do recall that one.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing. There's over 125 eyewitnesses right now if we want to talk about it. I'm an eyewitness. I've been within 20 feet of a craft, but that's anecdotal.
Well, so let me stop you right there. That leads me to another question.
Sure.
Why has no one taken a picture of these craft with a modern digital camera?
Well, I'll tell you. As Meier, well, we'll do the one allegedly because people, I will just tell you according to the information in the case, and then people can make up their own mind. As it approached 1980, 81, Meier was talking to them after he took, and I know you'll want to talk about this one, the wedding cake craft, but we can get to that. He said something about some more photos or films, and they said to him, we're not going to do any more photo ops. You have over 1,200 UFO photos, 8 films, and a video, all taken with pre-digital equipment, and the problem is that we're entering the digital age on Earth, and you're going to be attacked anyhow for all of this stuff, all of your evidence, everything you wrote, and it would be pointless if once digital equipment is available that we take photographs or allow photographs or films or what have you. Now this speaks also to the 3 new analyses that were done with 21st century technology, and in
regard to the photo evidence, though, I have to be very, just blunt. Like, a lot of people say they're just models on strings. And first, let me get to one other point that I need to make. You're saying that a retired OSI officer investigated Billy Meier and said, "Yeah, this may be a genuine case," and all.
No,
that.
He didn't say that. He said it is genuine, and he will take on any skeptics on my behalf. He took on Kevin Randall. That lasted 2 minutes, and he took on a guy in India. That lasted 2 minutes because none of these people in the UFO community are competent to discuss research.
Well, here, let me see you one Air Force OSI investigator that says Billy Meier's case is genuine. I see you have that card, and I will raise you my card, which is in another Air Force Office of Special Investigation former employee, Richard Doty, who says in an interview that I conducted with him, he was called in to look into the Meier case with government officials from Billy Meier's country. They went, and when they went out there, they found strings and things in odd places, and many other things that
Let me tell
they had the photos analyzed and saw strings. They had photos analyzed that said it was forced perspective. It's a model. There's miniatures. These photos are fake. So but here's the thing, Michael. When you say you make these statements like I have an Air Force Office of Special Investigations investigator that looked in and said this is a real case. Well, there's another guy that looked into it with the officials from Billy Meier's home country at the time and said it's fake. So he said it's fake. That's all I just want to get to. So now we're balanced. We're more balanced though now because it's funny. We both have the same kind of source that both disagree.
what Joe Tisk, the investigator, said, and I said to him, well, do you want to go on? And he says, look, I gave you an analysis that doesn't require me or anybody else. Anybody who knows how to think, if they go through my 6-page article, they will find how they can determine the truth for themselves. And he says, that's why I'm telling you it's ironclad. Now, he went into things like the films and the fact that Wally Gentleman, who was the special effects director for 2001, did a whole thing. He actually made a model for the investigators to take over to take photographs so they could compare them to Meier's photographs. He said, look, Gentleman says...
And what about, but what about, I have to say, what about Phil Langdon on YouTube? Because
I worked with Phil Langdon in 2009 to help him make his best efforts. But Phil Langdon... two things. One,
I should just explain to my listeners very quickly. I'll be very quick. Phil Langdon is a person on YouTube that I believe he's devastated the videos and models, and he's done it all using one arm. Because an argument has been made that a one-armed man couldn't hang the strings and build these models, so he did the stuff with one arm.
Stephen, how do you know he did it with one arm? Because I have some information that shows me he didn't. And not only that, let me go further. I tried to help him to make his best efforts because I know the evidence is real, and that's another matter. But I said, fine, take your best shot. He produced a video of the so-called famous pendulum craft. And then I pointed out to him that he neglected to show that the craft suddenly stops at an angle going up to the left for about 4 seconds and then resumes its mode. Oh, he attached another wire. Okay, so how many wires would one-armed Billy Meier have to pull that off? Now, let's go a little farther in Phil Langdon. I said, great, Phil, because Phil Langdon is a brilliant model maker. I told him, I said, you're terrific. You didn't duplicate Meier's stuff, but you created a similar effect. I said,
but I gotta tell you, just from my eyes, it looks pretty close. It looks really close. Enough. Yeah, but but the thing is, like what you just said with this. Okay, so in one video, the craft didn't make the exact movement that it made in Meier's. I mean, this is like
Stephen,
tiny details.
Wait a second. Hold on. In all due respect, I've spent 40 years on this, rolling it around, thinking it's a hoax myself, trying to trick Meier 4 times in 3 years. Oh, so let me just back it up so you understand what I'm saying.
Sure, yeah.
When the guy can build a model and puts a little miniature tree out and he's got all the time in the world, after looking at Meier's evidence, fine, you take your best shot at quote-unquote duplicating it. And then I asked him a simple question after he couldn't do it. The first time I said, Phil, with all your nice video and photographs, please have them analyzed to the same standards that Meier's were. He wouldn't. Why? Because the camera analysis, the computer analysis is going to show exactly what the facts are. And it's going to show exactly what happened in the late 70s when they brought a model over from MGM what's his name? Wally Gentleman had supervised the production, and they shot photographs in the same locations. It will show that these are small models close to the camera. And this is nothing that Richard Doty and all that BS. Listen, I had a guy come up to me in 2004, and he said to me, I want to tell you about something. You know Billy Meier's photos and claims about strings? He says, I have to apologize. I said, what are you talking about? He says, do you know who Cal Korff is? I said, sure. Cal Korff is the biggest opponent of the case.
I was going to ask you about him. Yeah, well, I have him on my notes here. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is all connected. So he said to me, well, Cal approached me when he was doing his book, Spaceship of the Pleiades, because I'm an illustrator and in graphics and all. He said, what would it take to put some lines in here where these UFOs are to kind of show that they're suspended or moving on the screen? And he says, at first I was uncomfortable with it, but I did it for him. And he said, if you don't believe me, first of all, here's Cal's card. He gave me Cal Korff's card. I don't know if I still have it. And he said, here's my card. And his name's Garrett Morse, and he since has written an expose about this. He was approached by Korff to do it. I had my own experience with Korff. I'll get to, if it's interesting enough, later on, because I was warned by the imaginary Plejaren extraterrestrials through Meier about a trap that Cal Korff was setting for me.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about that.
Yes. Now, but let's get back to the photos and stuff. As I said, I would take nothing away from Phil Langdon's making good models and nice forced perspective, but he won't have any of his photos tested because they won't hold up. Now,
Can I ask an important question, because this is something that I've wanted to ask you for a long time. I've heard you over and over again talk about the photo analysis, and I'm a data guy. I have never, to be clear to my audience, I have not purchased materials, okay, from Billy Meier. I have not purchased a book, or video or anything like that. But I would be very, very interested in seeing all of the data of all of the photo analysis in one place. It's on my site, free. I'll send you.
Oh, great! Here's what. Let me lock in on this because it's very important. Although the UFOs, believe it or not, are the least important aspect, people are interested, and I know in our conversation we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty. This is just, to me, the eye candy, and why it's real. Now let's go back to something, and we'll march through this. We have in our 6-page document for Mr. Tisk the basic, and I had spoken about this even before I ever heard from him, MMO, the means, the motive, and the opportunity. Now, because the skeptics cannot show with any evidence, credibly, that Meier's 1964 photos are not authentic, you have to stop right there and say, well, wait a minute, as Tisk does. If this is real, is there really anything in it for Meier to hoax anything? Well, okay, put that question aside, but how come all of his photos and films and everything were better, and he, after he lost his arm? And we have to be in the real world, not in the imaginary world of all the UFO experts who don't know crap about anything. So let's come back to it. 12 of those 80 photos still exist. We have them. I think I've got a good number of them up on the website. I certainly can find and send this stuff. It's all free. You don't have to buy Billy Meier's books.
Yeah, hey, listen, admittedly, maybe I just wasn't looking in the right place.
Okay, I got it. I'll send it to you.
So
when you see
that's more common. What do you know? More common ground.
Well, I am all about facts and evidence, not hype. Now, you have to just give a nod to something. We're talking about a guy in 64 that's got 80 UFO photos. Richard Dolan, Corey Good, the rest of them. One authentic? No, nothing. This is why I really detest, I have such contempt for this fraudulent thing that has done more harm to humankind. I will get into it, what they have prevented from coming forward when we get into it. We are now I'll just jump to it for a second and I'll come back to the UFO.
Sure.
We are in a state of irreversible, unstoppable climate destruction because these MFs, to a large degree, even worse than the government, because these people were out there saying they're investigating and they're going to they have suppressed it all. And do you know that starting in 1951, Meier is the first person I know of who forewarned about all of it, not just climate change, but unnatural global warming, the damage to the ozone from the atomic testing, the connection between extraction of petroleum, natural gas, mining of ores, and earthquakes and volcanoes.
Yes, and let me stop you and ask you a very important question. All of that information, all that information that you're talking about, that is prophetic information, apparently, where did it come from? Did the aliens write it and give it to him? Did they inspire him to write it? Where did the writings all come from?
Okay, let's go according to the information in the case again. It is said that Meier began his face-to-face voluntary contacts with these human beings when he was 5 years old, and that he was tutored for the first 11 years until he was 16 by a man named Svath. Okay, what can we do with that? All right, whatever, there it is. Svath gave him a tremendous amount of information and ostensibly also took him to see things. One of the things that he reported seeing on the moon, we didn't even discover until so much of this is where it gets really fascinating. But let me lock in on that. So Meier is told and shown things that are going to come, future events, ostensibly that his teacher was able to determine through time travel, which is a very depressing thought because it means they saw it, like it happens, if it's true. And beginning in 51, when he's 14 years of age, when was he 14? Yeah, 51. He publishes the environmental warnings. And these, of course, are things that he has also been taught to think quite well. By the time he's 7, he can think like a 35-year-old man, we're told. Okay, so he has information, especially now at this point for the first 11 years, from this teacher, and he's told to publish it. He turns to a school teacher of his. I think it was Professor Lehman and another one who was also there. They help him send out 3,000 copies of this stuff. 1951, running it off maybe on a mimeograph machine or whatever, and sending 3,000 copies around the world to governments, to scientists, to people. Nobody's responding to this stuff, and it's quite detailed. And I have links to all of that. It's all free. And I'll just tell you something else for the people that may wonder. I do all my work representing the case for free. In other words, Meier and his people do not pay me. I don't pay them. If anybody pays me to go and speak at a UFO event where I'm basically, I call it persona au gratin at this point, that's great. I can get $150 to show up at some event. But I am doing this voluntarily because it was the only way I knew how to keep it clean, so that the inevitable, you're in it for the money, all this stuff wouldn't be true.
And you know what? I'm having the same battles with doing my show and monetizing it. I'm having the same kind of battles. So I'm there with you. We look at that, more common ground.
Well,
but here, I want to ask you a couple of questions, though. We can get back to the theory. Let's just call it a theory that these things in the pictures are models. They are not full-size spacecraft.
Okay. All right.
The theory is pretty believable, and people have pointed and shown. Or let me be very clear with what I'm saying. I want to say it right. People have accused Billy Meier many times of using a trash can lid on the bottom of some of these so-called models. If we
Great, I love it.
Okay,
go for it.
And then I want to say Billy and an alien that he spoke to explained why they looked like trash cans by saying they inspired something in humanity, and we misinterpreted it and made the trash can lid look like what they were trying to inspire.
Right. Let me jump on that.
Okay. So, but just to be clear, the skeptics say it's a trash can lid, and then you guys your side sort of said, well, there's a reason why it looks like a trash can lid.
Okay. So let me
please explain this to me, because this is a crazy part of this.
Let's march back just 1 or 2 sentences to where models in 2006. Now remember, we've got this whole analysis about why Meier's authentic. That it doesn't require an OSI guide because it's written for the state of making a case based on evidence. Then we've got Wally Gentleman in 2001. We also have Michael Malin, who invented the Mars orbiter camera, and a bunch of other people on record, published in books, saying these are good photos, they represent a real phenomenon. I don't know about the story about aliens, but these are not hoaxes. Okay, we got a lot of that. Then in 2006, I personally went to a company called Uncharted Territory. Now, Uncharted Territory, I brought them the film that, Phil Langdon thought he could duplicate. And that also Wally Gentleman also said, Wally Gentleman said, I can duplicate that film, and it would only cost me $50,000. This is 1978 or 80. I would only need a crew of 15 people and about $80,000. Now, I go in 2006 to the company called Uncharted Territory. Volker Engel and Mark something or other. Okay, these are the guys that won the Academy Award for special effects for Independence Day. Very contemporaneous, 21st century special effects. And so I said, here, watch this film. What is that? Model, what is that? They said, well, no, it's not a model. I said, could you duplicate that? They said, well, we could, but we'd have to go to CG on that, because based on what we're looking at here, it's a real tree, there's a farmhouse. He would need a crane and a large object and several wires being controlled. And as Wally Gentleman pointed out, the problems with Meier's films and photos is the sunlight is falling exactly where it should if it's a real object. I mean, these are not UFO chatterboxes.
I think just to be clear, though, because we really have a lot to cover, is your point is they're not models.
Right, so let's go to the WC UFO, the so-called trash can lid. First of all, when you do side-by-side analyses, you will find out that it's not the same thing. Yeah, is it close? It's very interestingly close. But here's the problem.
But what about the statement that the aliens inspired humanity? Yes. And yeah, that's what I wanted to get to.
But let's
because to be very honest, Michael, and I just listen. To me, that explanation just sounds like ridiculous. Okay. It sounds like you were trying to defend against what people found to be true, which was that it was a trash can lid. Because Occam's razor, what is the simplest explanation? That a guy made a model out of a trash can lid, or that aliens inspired humans and we somehow made the trash can lid look like they're flying saucers?
So that's all opinion stuff, and that's fine. But let's go to this fact. The analysis, the actual analysis of Meier's photos, and I'm going to get to where you can find that, and you're going to have to do your own due diligence. And I have a link on the site where you can take one of the photos of that craft right off the internet and drop it into Photoshop. You change the contrast, you change the brightness, and this nighttime photo that the skeptics say is a model against a black background turns out to be a large object hovering over a road. Now, let me back up. That object is determined to be, there's three that we're told in this case. The smallest one is 7 feet in diameter. Do you think that there is a 7 foot in diameter garbage can lid? Does anybody have one? Well, how do we know that's really a 7 foot diameter object? In 2015 or so, a guy named Raul Zahi did a 74-page analysis using state-of-the-art computer technology that you will understand far better than I. I'm not a computer tech guy.
Sure, yeah, I'd love to see this.
He used Google Earth. He triangulated. He did the whole thing. And we have to remember, Meier took 64 photos and 1 5-minute video of this. This is a lot of work. Go ahead and set up model shots. First, make your models of 3 different sizes, so they're going to appear at least bigger in every case, or smaller. And then set up 64 shots, and then do a 5-minute video of it. Okay, broad daylight, by the way. So, what I leave you with here is, I don't care what people say. I don't even care what Billy says about it. What's the analysis going to reveal? There are 2 books at least now about it, at least one, and the 74-page analysis, which I have online. You're going to have all of this evening, and plenty of time for you to do whatever you want with it on your, when you publish your interview. And I can put you in touch with these people. These people are not, hiding out anywhere. They're glad to talk to you. But since you're a computer guy, you will understand 2 things. When Meier took these photos, and they were analyzed with the state-of-the-art technology of the time, Meier didn't have access to that technology, and he didn't have access to the 21st century technology. And when the sounds created ostensibly by this, what they call the WC UFO or wedding craft ship, were analyzed in 4 different sound labs. One of them was the undersea lab, Naval Undersea Lab at Groton, Connecticut.
Yes, and I have heard this over and over and over again. And one thing that I have to say is I don't know what to think about the sound evidence, except that I will say that to my ears, it sounds like an early analog synthesizer being used to generate the sound.
Your ears ring open. Yeah, but that's not what the scope showed. That's not what was determined in 4 separate sound labs. And let's go back. What is that sound evidence? That's Meier recording sounds coming down from the friggin' sky with as many as 17 eyewitnesses, including an off-duty or an undercover policeman, with people coming from 4 kilometers away. I've been in one of those fields. They're open.
Would you agree with me, though, if I say that sounds like some kind of sound that you might hear in a 1960s science fiction film? Or am I wrong? Doesn't that sound like a 1960s sci-fi sound effect?
Great. It sounds like it, but let's find out what it is. And that's what the sound recording analyses are on my website too. I've got all this stuff, and you can go ahead and you can try and duplicate those sounds yourself, and that means anybody listening, and scope them so that on even the sound analyzers from the 1970s, early 80s, that you're going to get the same interface of 24 audible, frequencies with overtones indicating another 8 frequencies, and blah, blah. Go ahead, do it.
Can I ask another question that I've never heard?
But wait a minute, before you do. We're crediting this one-armed guy with the ability to do photographs, models, videos, special effects, electronics.
And I have heard this argument from you, and what I will say is this, is that from all that I have observed of this man, he is an incredibly intelligent and resourceful man.
Yeah, but why don't some of the people in the audience...
I'm just saying that it's within the realm of possibility that he has the human potential to do these things.
While he's also raising a family, working as a night watchman, literally building walls and sidewalks on his property, trying to pull together people to help him disseminate the material, going on the alleged contacts, transcribing...
I get it. He was too busy. I get it.
Oh, my God. No, but it isn't even just too busy. Look, I've been there 20 times. I've been through every nook and cranny on that property. Nobody there is sitting around making sophisticated little models. They've got tractors and shears, and they are people that work on the land. Unlike
farm people, sure.
Yeah, maybe like I think you build your deck and your hose. They build, they take care of, they maintain.
Sure,
they're Swiss. They do it like watches. And sure, you could say, well, then Billy Meier. No. You've got to do a lot of. Look, that's why Joe's article is so powerful. It's means, it's motive, and it's opportunity. The means, we're not there. The means, we're not there. The motive, what's the promise? There's a guy who's going to dodge death of almost a couple dozen times, who doesn't go in the world, who doesn't make deals with film companies, who doesn't start doing special effects for anybody.
Well, he made a deal. He made a deal with at least one, didn't he, to do the Wendell Stevens documentary?
But that was a documentary. He didn't go. He had 3 different offers, like MGM, I think, maybe Capital or somebody else. There were 2 other offers for films.
That does bring me to a point that I think is very important. That it's the ugly elephant in the room to me, and I just want to say it. A lot of times I've heard you or other people mention that Wendell Stevens documentary when citing this kind of proof or evidence, but I mean it's an absolute verifiable fact that Wendell Stevens was a convicted child pedophile.
So do we know that Wendell Stevens was a pedophile, or that he was convicted, or do we know
that he was convicted of a child-related sexual offense? Let's just leave it at that. And I'm going to say 6. I want to be very clear. I mean, I don't have listen. I would say 4 or more sources who told me that have known him for a long time, previous to his death, that he always had a problem with that. He always had a problem with that. But my point is, let's just cut to the chase. What I'm saying is that people citing Wendell Stevens. No, it's not. There's public records that he's a convicted pedophile.
I have some hearsay too from Meier, from Lee and Britt Elders, who were the...
Can I just make the point? The point is that I hear you and other people talk about this Wendell Stevens documentary or Wendell Stevens investigation like he's some kind of person that we should trust or believe in. And that's what I have a problem with. People citing that documentary and saying, well, there's the proof. Wendell Stevens thought that it was a real case.
But Wendell, this is where you've got to upgrade something. One of the articles that we have on the line, I told you that we quote people who are independent, connected with things like USGS, JPL, IBM, McDonnell Douglas. They took the evidence at the request of Meier to be analyzed not by Wendell Stevens and not by the clowns in the UFO world, but by reputable laboratories and independent experts.
Yes, and I've heard you claim, there's a title to one of your posts or something about NASA and proof that NASA agrees or something like this, that Billy Meier's case is genuine?
Yeah.
You want to explain that one to me? Sure. Because here's, Michael, I have family and I have some contacts, and I don't believe that that's an accurate statement at all.
Okay, so let me give you a few little things about that. NASA has consistently made announcements about new discoveries, right? Can we agree on that part?
Yes, absolutely.
New scientific discovery. Okay. I have on several occasions, and along with other people, had the experience to find that those were not really new discoveries at all. That Billy Meier had verifiably, in copyrighted books and documents, published that information. This is where we move it to what I like to call the higher standard of proof. Let me give you a story about something that happened about 2 months ago, maybe a little more. My girlfriend and I, we went up to the USGS here in Flagstaff. And we went to them specifically because there is the whole Mars rover thing. There's a lot of that research being done, new research on Mars, that's being conducted out of Flagstaff right here, where we also have the Lowell Observatory. And I took an impromptu meeting with a very nice guy who was kind enough to step away from his work with no notice, simply because I showed up and said I want to talk to him. And he came out, and his name is Ken Herkenhoff, and he's heading up this Mars rover whole thing. And I said to him, say, Ken, right here in my hands, I've got a few papers of things that I published up for you, and I'm also going to send them to you in email, and they are about specific information on Mars that you guys now know, but that were published before you ever discovered them. And he looks at me, and I opened up the photo book a little briefly, and he's really not too interested. He doesn't want to see these photos. I said, fine. And I said, I want you to take a look at this stuff and then send me an email. So he sends me an email, and all this is on, I'll send you links to all these articles. So he sends me an email, and he says, well, maybe he's a good guesser. And I said, I don't think that explains all of these things about Mars that have more information in them about the details there than NASA's published yet. And he says, well, I've never heard about lightning on Mars. And so I went online and I looked up NASA discovers lightning on Mars, 2009. Of course, Meier had published it 20 some years earlier. And here's one that happened 7 years ago. I'm in Las Vegas. At all things, I'm at a MUFON event. They gave me a table there while they're showing one of my films, and I'm not there lecturing. They're showing Silent Revolution of Truth. But they give me a table, and I've got it out, and the guy walks up, and you've probably heard this story. You can stop me anytime. Crusty older guy, and he says, shaking his head left to right. And I said, can I help you? He said, yeah, I'm interested in UFOs, but I think this Meier thing is a hoax. I said, really? I said, what do you do? I'm a retired judge. I said, okay, so you're a judge. Can I step into your courtroom? Certainly. Guy was cool, didn't bat an eyelash. He knew I want to confront him. Step right in. How can I help you? I said, you know that NASA says that they discovered that the reason that the surface of the planet Mercury is contracting is because of the metal core. They discovered that just a few years ago. I say, if I tell you that they didn't discover it, but my friend in Switzerland did, would I have to prove that to you? And he says, well, of course you have to prove it. So I reached over and I got a book, copyright date, and that was like 80-something or other. And I scrolled through to some conversations from 1976. And I said, where this man Billy Meier, asks this alleged extraterrestrial woman, what's the reason for the contraction of the surface of the planet Mercury? And she says, well, that's easy. It's really due to the fact of the metal core of the planet. I said, Your Honor, in your courtroom, who prevails? And it took him about a half a second to say two things. One was, you do, and the rest was, how much are all these things here? Now, let me explain something to you and to your audience. Copyrights are the ironclad friggin' internationally recognized standard of proof of first publication. They don't mean that what's copyrighted is true. It just means there it is. Whether it's a song, a movie script, or in this case, a book with transcripts between an Earthman and an alleged extraterrestrial. The guy could make it up himself. How does he know that before it's discovered? What about in 1978 of October when Billy Meier publishes information on Io being the most volcanically active body in the solar system, explains how high the ejecta goes, what it's composed of, and why that ejecta, which does not escape the gravitational pull of that moon, falls back onto it and creates a smooth, unusually smooth surface for a volcanically active body.
Well, Michael, we need to take a break for station identification and a few words from our sponsors. We'll be right back, folks. We are back with my guest, Michael Horn, U.S. Media Representative for Billy Meier. Let's get on with some questions. Billy Meier has made some prophetic predictions that can be proven by copyrights that are accurate. And I will give you that, but here's the problem that I have with that. I've looked at some of that evidence in some detail, and I agree with you that it appears that he has made predictions and copyrighted them before those things were known. But the problem that I have with this being used as here's proof that Billy Meier is genuine is the same problem that I have with Edgar Cayce predictions or some other psychics, because the volume of what they've written and published is so ridiculously large that, I believe that if you write enough material down, something's going to hit. And like, for example, the question that I have is, the Bible, for example, is about 785,000 words. How many words, how much has Billy Meier published? Because you're saying, okay, great, we have, I don't know, what did you just cite, like 6 or 7 examples? But no, what is the source? What is the amount of the volume of material that he has written in predictions?
Okay, we have only had about maybe 5,000 of the 45,000 pages to work with in English. We have culled 250 error-free examples of specific, detailed information, prophetically accurate, on every planet in the solar system, on black holes, speed of light, speed of gravity, things that are in biology, in archaeology, anthropology. Now, here's where I've got to call you up short. You see, you keep on trying to jump to something without grasping something.
No, Michael, I'm asking you questions, and I'm expressing my doubts
because you're not thinking.
Because I'm asking you to address my doubts. That's all I'm doing.
Hey,
yeah, great. I think you're doing a good job explaining this to me.
I'm going to do even better, because what I'm going to do, if you'd like, I'm going to bring up, let's just say, some of the specific Mars information, just 1 or 2 things, and then I'll. How did he know? Okay.
And just an aside, you're saying that you had access to 5,000 pages of material. Okay, and just so that my listeners can get an idea, the Bible is 1,200 pages. So you're talking about 5 Bibles full of prophetic predictions.
Yeah. I'm saying,
and you've got how many that have come true out of that that stack of 5 Bibles full of material that Meier has written?
All right, I'm trying to explain it to you.
Okay,
we have not found any erroneous scientific information, not theoretical, not someday a bird will fly between 2 towers. We're talking about scientific information. Let me give you some of it, and then you can try to figure out, because yes, I'm going to tell you again, and your listeners, he's far ahead of NASA, of course, because his how is it that in 2000, and oh my gosh, all right, here we go. I'm going to give you some of this. I'll even give you the verbatim and on a few, and then people can look this up. And Billy says, while visiting Mars, Ptah explained to me that Mars had larger amounts of water led into its rivers, which are now partially filled in by dust and volcanic ash, than what was ever, in addition, was ever the case with the largest rivers on Earth. In addition, he talked about the 1,000-fold more water than what is found on the largest rivers on Earth. It seems to be somewhat fantastic to me, which is why I think I misheard or didn't listen properly. The alleged Quetzal says you shouldn't doubt your attention because you properly understood everything that Ptah explained to you. The information about the enormous quantities of water which were led into the Martian rivers corresponds to the facts, as well as the water courses that are partially filled in by sand, dust, and volcanic ash, which are generally called canals on Earth, but which were truly enormous rivers that were dozens and even almost 100 kilometers in diameter, and there were thousands of kilometers in length. Now that was published by Meier June 11th, 1986, 33 years ago. There's another 2 specific things about that, and then in 1987, Quetzal also, I'm going to tell you more here about water at the South Pole, specifically South Pole, water on Mars and all this. And then also Quetzal tells him the following. There was several this will be the case in several times in the coming reference to water, namely that large occurrences of water in the form of ice and snow can be proven by probes on Mars. But the final certainty will first be attained at the beginning of the third millennium, and to be sure, by a Mars probe that will be called 2001 Mars Odyssey, as our look into the future has revealed. Now, of course, that did happen, but here's our discoveries in 2001. Scientists may have discovered the largest flood channels in the solar system on Mars, or a system of gigantic ancient valleys, some as much as 200 kilometers wide, lie partially buried under a veneer of volcanic lava flows, ashfall, and wind-blown dust in Mars' western hemisphere. The best explanation is they were formed by catastrophic floods that at their peak potentially discharged as much as 50,000 times the flow of the Amazon River.
Okay,
now,
I'll give you that. He was right. But
I can give you 200 more.
He was right. Okay, so 200 out of a stack of 5 Bibles, though.
No. Listen, you're misunderstanding something. This isn't Billy with 5,000 pages of so-called predictions. These are conversations between Billy and whoever these people are that cover. They're talking about the most mundane things in the world.
But would you agree with me, Michael, that if you have that much material, that it would be easy to cherry pick some things that
because
sort of resemble proof of prophecies?
Stephen, most of these things aren't even presented to him as prophecies. We've got a whole bunch of prophecies and predictions which are unfailingly fulfilling. I can give you those where they're presented as prophecies. What I just read to you.
Well, the one thing that I also question with some of this stuff is these super intelligent beings which are far in advance of us. We can agree on that point that the beings
they're far in advance of us.
Okay. So they're giving Billy Meier very specific information about some of the planets in our solar system, which to me, it doesn't seem like useful information, really. So what I wondered and I've heard you talk about all of this stuff, and I've read a lot of this stuff, but what I've often wondered is why can they not give us something more meaningful, like a formula to but let me finish. A formula to cure cancer, and to follow, there's been a challenge issued to Corey Goode, who claims he talks to super advanced intelligent aliens, that if you're truly in contact with them, ask them to give us a cure for childhood cancer. And in your case, I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to be very selfish. I have an autistic child.
Okay.
So what I would ask is, if Billy Meier's in contact with these super intelligent, super advanced beings who, by the way, seem to really care about humanity. I have a huge problem with my son being autistic. He is nonverbal. He cannot communicate. He's 7 years old now, cannot communicate at all. And what people need to realize about autism is it's not just the child with the autism, it's the entire family suffers to help him through it, So I would be very selfish and say, this planetary information, that's great, but can we have something that would alleviate a tremendous amount of suffering? Imagine the suffering, the amount of suffering that would be lifted if the Pleiadians could come and give us a cure for childhood autism.
Well, I can give you a few answers to that. I'm going to give you a couple. Number one, these are human beings who have gone through their own evolutionary challenges, including terribly destructive things to them and to other people, and what they've learned is that self-responsibility is one of the core foundational principles of life in this universe. Now, that doesn't mean that they're indifferent and cold-hearted, because if the information is true, on any number of occasions they have gone so far as to impulse, if you will, that means to implant, without the conscious knowledge of the receiver, information on medical things. They have published information even on some of the causes. There's information in this case about autism as well, and we will find out where that is in there, and you can read it. Some of these things are genetically determined, and that it will be, and they've also pointed out many times that it's the morons on Earth who gripe about progress in the form of genetic engineering and think it's all bad, because science, of course, as we know, is a double-edged sword, who stifle the progress for the tremendous discoveries that competent scientists and medical scientists could make to cure most of these things. Now, I'm going to back it up a little, and because you have a very particular case of something highly serious to you and important to you and to many people who have children or relatives who have a form of autism or other illnesses or handicaps. Yes, of course. But what they have said to us, and here's more about it. Think about the implications if this is true. They said to Meier, they said, if the Catholic Church, if your library at Alexandria had not been burned and all of the books and all of the what you might call the secret sciences hadn't been destroyed, your world would be composed now of space-traveling human beings for the past 200 years. You wouldn't be throwing tin cans at the moon. You would have solved the secrets of actual space travel. But your religions and your politics and the greed of your world is so oppressive, we can't give certain information that we'd love to, because your scientists, their first application will be to create weapons. And if that isn't clear to everybody now,
but I'm not clear on how a weapon can be made from a cure for childhood autism.
Well, you're not. Yeah. Well.
And listen, I know that this whole line of debate between us seems a little crazy and selfish of me, but this is something that I've wondered about. If there's really a guy that's in touch with these super advanced humanoids that have all of this technology, it's a selfish thing for me to say, well, can I have one thing? Well, you want me to become a complete and total believer overnight?
No, I don't want you to believe a damn thing. This is not belief. This is a science-based investigation.
But here's what I will say, Michael. Your explanation for why they can't is to me an excuse, because here's the way that I reasoned through this for my own sort of analogy. Mm-hmm. If I was very interested in a race of, let's say, great apes, and I went there and I observed them, and I was, I felt a certain way towards them, like I wanted the best for them, and I wanted to help them, and I started interacting with them, and then I saw one of their tribe of apes in great suffering, and I had the capability to alleviate that suffering in that ape that I have become involved with, and I have been trying to help for generations, for decades. I've been trying to help this group of apes. I saw one suffering terribly. I had the power to stop that suffering, and for all my light and love, I want to say propaganda, I did nothing for that ape. It doesn't make sense. I certainly would stop the suffering of that ape.
Okay, that's very nice. And
I'm not as advanced as those beings.
Stephen, you don't know that all sorts of interventions to help humankind haven't taken place. But let me now address it.
Sure.
How about this? As much as you and other parents, siblings, etc., of autistic or handicapped children would like to have an answer, completely understandable. There's things I'd like answers to. Would you settle right now, because you're a compassionate person, would you settle for help in saving the planet from utter destruction in a specific way? Would you settle for that for a starter? That these people would like to help us avoid complete and total destruction to the majority of our planet, and that they have provided that information. Would you settle for that as a starter?
Well, that's very good.
Yes or no? The thought. Do you want it or not?
Sure. What is the answer? How do we get off this freight train to destruction? Because I agree with you on that. The Earth is not doing well.
A lot of that, and right now, as I said, a lot of it is unstoppable. All the environmentalists, with all their good intentions, their efforts now amount to an anthill. And they will, because the actual progression of the death of the seas to atmospheric pollution to environmental pollution it's monumental, and it isn't touched on by any of these organizations which have a donate button, as if giving money to any of these phonies is going to make a dent in that. But let me give you the good news, something you could do. Now, bear with me, and I'm going to take you through it step by step, but not too complicated. In 1981, Billy Meier received some information, and he began to publish it. And what was that information about? Well, it was about an object heading towards the Earth. Heading towards the Earth. And that object they called the red meteor. And Billy asked them, what are you talking about? And they said, there is an object coming from the depths of space. We call it the red meteor. On either April 13th, 2029 or April 13th, 2036, it will slam into your Earth unless the scientists of your world come together. They haven't discovered it yet. They will. And when they discover it, they must get immediately onto a concerted effort to deflect this object from its path.
Just to be clear, you said it's going to hit. When is this going to hit?
April 13th, 2029 or April 13th, 2036. They said there are different means that scientists will think of in order to deal with it, but we don't recommend one of the things, which would be to blow it up, because it will simply rain down then on the Earth. A solar sail is not the best idea either. Our recommendation, you don't have to do it, our recommendation is that they detonate a nuclear charge at a particular point in the proper proximity to nudge it gently, no joke
with
intended.
A nuclear weapon, yeah.
Okay, now, that was in 1981. In 2004, NASA discovered asteroid Apophis. And they said it's probably going to pass by the Earth. It's harmless. It'll pass by the Earth either April 13th, 2029 or April 13th, 2036. Oh, okay. And then after a while, a funny thing happened. They minimized that there was any concern about it, something that's going to slam into the... And by the way, the play aren't told Meier exactly where it will hit if it isn't deflected, but we'll get to that in a minute. But NASA went, I don't know, a year or so after their discovery of it, and they changed their size estimate. Now the size estimate of it was within 25 meters of what Billy Meier was told. Now, we can keep on doing it. I don't know about this, and I don't know the Bible. Look, if we can't think straight, we probably deserve for that thing to slam in here. Now, that is information we were given 23 years before, absolutely, before NASA officially discovered it. NASA's been dragging their feet. Shortly after we published information, and I had it personally at my expense illustrated and translated into 6 different languages, and it's in comic book form so that it's simple enough even for a NASA scientist to understand. And I'm tired of hearing crap from NASA and SETI and all these people that are just working their paychecks and all the rest of it when something that really is a threat. Oh, but Billy Meier, we can't have that. We can't have some guy in Switzerland giving us information, because after all, he's not the friggin' American who knows every goddamn thing, pardon me. Now, this is real information, and this is one of 250 things, but it hasn't hit yet. It's just that NASA corroborated it. And so when I say NASA proves that this is real, I mean to time and time and time again, NASA, JPL, USGS, and you name it, they're publishing new discoveries that I read them. I'll give you some real direct experience. In 1988, I opened up a local newspaper in Los Angeles, and I read a new discovery from Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory.
Michael, just to remind my listeners that this whole thing was really from the question. You've made statements that NASA confirmed that the case, the Billy Meier case, is real.
That's correct.
But the problem is no one from NASA came out and said, yes, the Billy Meier case is real. What you're saying is that he made prophecies about things that NASA later discovered. That's not the same thing.
No, he didn't make you see, I love using the term scientifically accurate, prophetically accurate. he published information forewarning of specific things that NASA then later specifically discovers. Now, I've got a great idea here. Since you say NASA didn't corroborate, okay, you know people in NASA. Get them to go on the record. I was just interviewed by the...
You realize the difficulty in getting somebody from NASA to go on the record on this case.
Why? You want to...
I agree with you. I think someone should be brave, and if they're going to say this is fake, we don't believe in any of this, come on out and say it. If they,
and I'll be glad to debate any and take on 6 of their top scientists on a public stage at a skeptics convention, and I'll present the Meier material, and they can tell me why it's not real.
Can I get to one of the other really big things, which is
past the destruction of the planet? Is there something bigger than that? I mean, go ahead.
Well, no. I mean, one of the points of Billy Meier's story that has been debated so much, and that is the picture of the Pleiadian that turned out to be a dancer on a television show. And I saw that you guys had a video of that dancer who's kind of a believer in Billy Meier. But here's the question that I have. I have heard various explanations, and I wanted some clarity on this. Billy Meier takes a picture, says that it's a Pleiadian woman, and then other people later said, no, that's a Dean Martin dancer, and here's the girl. And then I've heard varying explanations for why this happened from your side. Let's say your side. And I want to be clear. That's why I'm just asking the question, because I thought I've heard that. Let me finish. I thought I heard an explanation that sort of the Men in Black came and took the real picture and put in a picture of the dancer to discredit Billy Meier.
Well, you can actually figure it out yourself. Okay, I'm going to.
But others have said no. Yeah. That's he faked a picture of an alien So that's what I want to. I just want to discuss this and see where is what exactly happened.
Let me get to it.
Okay, sure.
We'll get to it because I know you've got limited time. I want to try and address 50 questions you've got. So I'm going to address this one right away. It goes like this. In 1975, Meier was on, again, according to the information of the case, he's on a craft with these people. These 2 non-Pleiadian women, they were from another race, but they're humans, were there. Asket, the blonde you're talking about, is said to have been his second teacher, starting from 16 on to 27. And he asks if he can take their picture, and they said, yes, of course. And then, I'll tell you how I prove this, hold on. But then he says to Ptah, hey, that's really neat. And Ptah says, well, that's not all of it. On Earth, there are 2 women who are singers and dancers in show business on Earth who are basically doubles for these 2 people. He says, let's go. Take me there. I want to see. They said, no, it's not a good idea. For certain reasons, we're going to stay away from that. 13 years later, and I read this, by the way, in 1986, and it's still in published documents, so nobody can jiggle around that. 13 years later, somebody says, oh my gosh, those are the Dean Martin dancers. Then you have the photos come out. Billy throws in shoeboxes, and he puts them in his album, and they publish them. Well, he doesn't pay a lot of attention. But then when you look at the photos, and I have it linked online, everybody can go, what do you know? The photo is supposed to be of Asket, and the one in the Dean Martin supposed thing where they're trying to gotcha on Billy, well, they're 2 different faces. And what else do you know? It wasn't taken from a TV screen. There's no cathode ray tube lines there. Well, how did he do it? Well, it would mean that Billy Meier in, 1970 something, when the Dean Martin show is broadcast or rebroadcast on a videotape at some point, or live at some point in Switzerland, he's going to get his camera with a viewfinder stuck at infinity, put it up in front of his TV set, take a photograph that not only has no cathode ray tubes in it, but when you examine it, shows that there's a double image exposure where a man's collar has been moved over the other woman's neck that would require editing from a videotape. Stephen, do the research before we jump into castigating this man who's put his damn life on the line for the morons in this planet, who so far don't even want to know that, yes, this object coming towards the Earth is going to set back life on Earth. If our
but can we just talk about one other photo? I appreciate your explanation, and listen. I want to just be clear on it before I go dive in again and try to make a determination on that whole controversy with that photo and the answer and whether it's real or whether it's fake. The next photo that I've always had a huge problem with is this time travel photo of, I guess it's a pterodactyl. Are you going to tell me that's a genuine photo that Billy Meier took when he was time traveling?
Look. Okay, I'm going to do this with that. No, that is not one of his photos. What happened is there had been, at the time that he published photos, there had already been quite a few attempts in his life. An intelligent person in the intelligence industry is going to say, if we can't kill this guy, let's assassinate his character. Let's put in photos that aren't his, and we'll start the whole thing down.
Okay, so this is the Men in Black kind of explanation that I think is convenient, but I will follow you down that road. Let's hear about it. Let's hear about it. Listen, do I believe that the government could do things like that? Absolutely.
In real life, things get messy. A man who lives in rural Switzerland with no technology to speak of, and we'll go back to Joe Tisk's analysis, who's published absolutely ironclad photos of extraterrestrial craft.
But just to be clear, you're saying the pterodactyl. Just to be clear, you're saying the pterodactyl photo is not his, Michael. Just to be clear, you're saying that the pterodactyl photo, the time travel photo, he didn't take that. That's not his.
Hold on. Meier, long ago, actually about 75 or 78, disavowed all the photos that are called the space photos, the Ascot Nera, because they said while Meier took 1,200 or 1,800 photos on his trips with them, most of them were stolen. The ones that weren't were manipulated and sent back by intelligence services, where they got in and doctored photos with the help of people who could get to them. You have to understand, Meier took photos that he never could develop. He had to take everything to a lab. You've got to do your real research and not just, if you're going to throw this stuff, then you're going to have a few thousand pages to read and reason through. This is not a UFO case. This is something that goes far beyond that has been attacked and suppressed. This is not the Meier dinosaur pterodactyl Ascot photo case.
Okay, can I just ask about one other photo, because I want the same question. Is this a photo that Billy Meier took and claims is real, and that is the laser gun photo?
Yes.
And what do you say about the person that found almost the exact laser gun toy made around the time the photograph was taken?
You think so, do you? Where did you get that from? Because I'm going to tell you that isn't true. And I'm going to tell you, hold on, I'm going to find it here for you. I think we might have a little something where that can be found.
Yes, I have a site that I can definitely source. I don't have it in front of me, so I apologize.
Okay.
And listen, I appreciate you going through. I only have a few, just those few photos that I really had specific questions. I'd like to ask you about the wedding cake thing too, because that one I think is ridiculous.
We'll go back to that, but let's do this. And this is a little long, but you asked for it, and these people are saying it's a lie and all of that, so bear with me. And this is from Wendell Stevens, his books, whatever you think of him about him or not.
He's a child molester. You're going to cite a child molester as a source?
Hold on. This is a man who, along with two other people...
Michael, if the best source you have is a child molester to defend your position, I'll let you use him. I just want to be clear in that you're citing a child molester as a source for proof.
If you knew the truth about everybody, did you? I hope you never voted for Bill Clinton.
Would you agree with me that a child molester cannot be trusted? Can you say? Can we agree on that? Let's get some common ground here. You're citing a child molester as a source for proof. I don't trust child molesters.
Stephen, I'm an investigator and I'm a research scientist, and pardon me if you want to run bullshit arguments at me.
I'm just telling you what I feel. If you want to go ahead with your argument using a child molester as a source, you can go ahead and do that. I'm just telling you what I feel. You can go ahead with your argument then. We're talking about the laser gun now, right?
Listen, then talk about the laser Clinton.
Let's talk about it. But I'm just saying, you know.
The following, please, just hold that stuff. Because it's really unprofessional.
Michael, I will agree that I will not I won't go into that territory anymore. You can talk about him and use him as a source, whatever you want to do. I just want to be clear in how I feel about him and people citing him as a source. We're good, Michael. Let's both take a breath. Let's both take a breath and step back. Remember that we're trying to find common ground, and I'm only asking you questions.
Professional.
Okay, well, I apologize.
If a man is a child molester, do not leave children with him. I don't know if the guy down the street doing people's taxes or the guy in the fixing cars is a child molester, and there's plenty of them that get outed, and there are people in all walks of life. Did the guy fix the damn car? Did he do the taxes? Now, that doesn't mean I want to go to him. Now, listen to what was said in this investigation by an investigator. When I first saw these
child molesting investigator, yes.
Are you going to keep doing that?
No, okay,
go
ahead.
Afraid?
No, I'm not afraid of what you
want to know something about real life is messy, Stephen. Real life is messy.
But we choose what sources to trust. We choose. We both have the right to choose which sources we trust. That's all I'm saying.
Then why don't you listen to the evidence?
I will listen to what
if you're really sincere, then you go back and you tell me, you know what? What Joe Tisk, that guy, said is true.
I will admit this to you, Michael. I will admit this to you. Every time somebody cites him as a source, I turn off. I'm sorry. I apologize. That's just the way I feel about it, and so I have not exposed myself to a lot of what he has found. I will admit that freely because of this situation. So I apologize. And like I said, let's both take a step back and take a breath. We're trying to find common ground. I'm just asking questions. Let's get into the laser gun photo then.
Here it is. When I first saw these laser pistol photos, I had serious misgivings about them and the whole story of the so-called ancient weapon. But then Edward Meier took me to a place in the Fracht Nature Preserve near Hinville, where he had tested the first one. He showed me a seared line of vegetation that went in a true straight line until it struck an embankment and stopped. He showed me another, and then a limb high above our heads on a tall tree, over 60 feet tall, that was severed cleanly at a place about 45 feet above the ground and 20 feet out from the trunk, where the branch was about 1 inch in diameter. The severed part of the branch was still lying on the ground where it had fallen, and I picked it up and examined it. It was severed cleanly without any fraying, but the most noticeable thing about it was the thin layer of seared wood at the break. The charring was no more than 1 inch to 1 1/4 inches deep into the wood, all the way through the branch, and the searing of the bark was likewise very narrow at the break, and so sudden and quick that the sap in the bark did not bubble out and run. Certainly no...
I take it back. I have definitely heard this whole explanation several times. I have heard that.
Have you seen the hole in the tree?
Yes, but what I've wondered is, yes, I've seen a picture. I believe I've seen a photograph of it. And my question about that is, couldn't somebody have done that with a drill and a plumbing torch?
Great. I'll jump down. Then there's the problem of the hole in the tree. The tree was a good 10 inches to 12 inches in diameter, and the tree was green and full of sap.
I got a 16-inch drill. I mean,
how would a man with one arm bore such a hole? An auger bit would have been impossible because it would surely bind in a hole that long in a living tree. How would Meier hold it?
So it was, and then the other question about the laser gun. So they gave him the laser gun. Where's it at? They took it back. Okay.
You've got my time, Stephen, and now, God damn it, listen to this stuff and stop giving me BS.
Michael, like I said, let's take a breath. Let's take a breath.
Something.
I'm just trying to. The other
then
question
don't
interrupt.
Okay. You asked the question.
I know, but we have limited time. That's all I'm saying. I'm trying to get to a few more questions.
Where would he get an auger bit 12 inches long by 1 inch in diameter, a non-standard size that would have to be a special order and made up by a toolmaker? This would leave tracks that could be traced later, and the hole in the tree had to be made in 20 minutes or less, and all equipment removed and hidden, never to be discovered again. Oh, but there's more.
Yes, but he can't produce the laser gun. Why can't he produce the laser gun? So we can examine it, check out its technology, maybe learn from it?
People don't jump through hoops just because brain-dead human beings on Earth decide.
Brain-dead? He said he had a laser gun. I'd like to take a look at the laser gun, but there's a convenient explanation for why he can't let me look at the laser gun.
Because you're a nobody in the overall scheme of things.
I'm a nobody. Okay, but...
So am I.
asteroids.
So we've been given...
If you're saying you got... Listen, this is like 5-year-olds on a playground. If 5-year-olds on a playground, if one 5-year-old came up to a group of 5-year-olds on a playground and said, I got a laser gun, we all want to see it. Why can't we see the laser gun? He said he had a laser gun, Michael Horn. Come on.
And you are using 5-year-olds on a playground thinking...
It's an analogy. It's the best analogy I could think of. It's the best analogy I could think of. And just like 5-year-olds on a playground, if that kid went, I do got a laser gun, but you can't see it, all the 5-year-olds would think he was lying. So it's a good analogy.
It isn't a good analogy because you are still doing the same thing that everybody else does that wants that they won't.
Michael, I grew up with this story. I wish it was true. I wish it was true. I grew up with this story. I want it to be true. I wish that it was true.
You can't think your way out of a paper bag here. Listen, watch this. Then the hole in the tree, which a man could insert his thumb into, was not completely round inside, but somewhat oval in some places, like the hole made by pouring hot water into a snowbank, and the charring through light and penetrating into the wood no more than 1/4 inch or less was uniform throughout, including the front entrance and the rear exit from the trunk, and the dark soil behind the tree in line of sight through the hole was still smoking and fused. I'm not taking anybody else's word for this because I was there a short time later and personally examined it all for myself. Now, you don't like it, it's not good enough because, well, you want the toy gun to appear. They found out that when they went looking for the toy gun, it didn't exist. It didn't exist. It didn't exist in sporting goods stores. It didn't exist in toy stores. It didn't exist in anywhere that they could find it. And to this day, nobody's produced it. So what's actually happening?
Well, somebody's found it. I saw a side-by-side comparison. Was that inaccurate? You
produced the side-by-side because I've seen every so-called side-by-side, and they explain how this works, that it isn't the same. And they said, you know, one guy insisted the gun, here it is from here, was a plastic toy weapon, and it could be proved that the color of the muzzle of the weapon was the same color as the freshly painted red fence in Meier's yard, also seen in the pictures.
Okay, however, but one more question, and I mean this sincerely. So aliens give him the laser gun, and he just takes it like in his backyard on a farm and shoots a tree? Like, why? I don't understand the logic in doing that. You don't understand
because you've got a construct in your mind that things have to happen a certain way, just like SETI does. They think somebody's going to babble to them in mathematics, and that's going to be contact, while Billy Meier, for 77 years, is talking to real people, and they're doing it in German, so he can understand it and transcribe it. But
why would super intelligent aliens just lend Billy Meier a laser gun then? I mean, why would they do that? Why would they lend him a laser gun?
Well, it looks to me like it provoked some controversy, don't you think? Let me finish this thing about the toy weapon, because it was not seen to be true. In the same photos, the fence was painted with a glossy blood red enamel, whereas the muzzle of the weapon was a flat rosy red color. And nor did this guy know that we had been to every toy supplier in Switzerland and failed to find any toy weapon, anything like the laser pistol Meier photographed. A search of sporting goods stores was equally fruitless. To this day, we've never found a match for that. In other words, whatever you think of the investigators or anything else, they did an investigation. And they did all the people that participated, there were many more people than Wendell Stevens. And two of them, Lee and Britt Elders, were skeptics when they went over there. But they
and that leads me to one other question about that documentary. Is a lot of people, including you, I believe, have cited Jim Delatoso's image analysis, and I have a huge problem with that because he just, first of all, like the 1970s, early 80s technology that he used to do that analysis, and second of all, he's been largely discredited with his analysis of the Phoenix Lights being completely and totally not science. And so that's one of those things that always makes me...
So is he wrong every time, or is he right every time? How about neither?
Well, but here's my concern. You've got you like to cite, like, this is proof, and you've got Jim Delatoso, who most professional image analysts would say he's it's junk science what he does. It's not real science. So you're saying that you have photographic proof. That's the guy doing it, and he's been largely discredited.
No,
and then you're saying the laser gun's real. I have a child molester that saw it.
There you go again. It's a very disingenuous thing to do. You don't know that the people that you rely on, maybe people in your own family, are goddamn child molesters. How would you know until they're outed? Maybe they've been living these wonderful saint-like lives.
I think you're missing the point. My point is that you're citing these people as proof of your claims, and one's been largely discredited, and the other one, I'm not going to say it again.
Listen, Stephen, if you're going to do this...
No, I just want to move on.
I'm going to give it to you plain and straight from the beginning. An analysis using standard protocols for determining evidence shows the Meier case is authentic. That's the first thing. You've yet to acknowledge that because you're not willing to go means, motive, and opportunity. Let me look at that. I didn't see that article, even though it's been on your website for 2.5 years, Michael. And I don't know. I mean,
I've been a little behind on the Billy Meier case. I apologize.
Then you don't have a right.
What I will say is this. What I will say is that, I'm trying to do my due diligence. I'm trying to understand what, to me, has been a mystery since I was a child. I love the story, Michael, but
forget the story.
Where I'm at is still,
Stephen, do you understand evidence or not? Yeah, I'm having a conversation with you here where you go into your feelings every 2 minutes. Then you wanted to, Wendell Stevens. Maybe, you know what? It's possible he wasn't. It's possible that what I was told by Lee and Britt Elders and other people was he was told to shut the hell up or he was going to jail and they were going to put him there. And that's what happened. Now, I don't know that it's true, and I don't know that he was a child molester. I have absolutely no patience with child molesters. I think they are the worst people in the world. But I heard, and I knew Wendell for 20 years. Pardon me with your second and third hand information. And if you're going to be an investigator,
it's public records. It's not second and third hand information.
Hey,
it's public records. It's first hand court documents that I got here on him.
Everything's true, right? You read it on. That's the news. That's the news. So it's obviously true, right? I mean, I know that. You know that. It's true because
okay, let's just say this. Anybody can read the court transcripts. They're public records and make their own determination of the veracity of the claims and his conviction, and let's move on from there.
So therefore, of course, he was guilty. We all know that nobody's ever been wrongly accused, nobody's ever been wrongly convicted, and nobody's ever been wrongly jailed. Oh, of course. Agree. So why don't we go to the place where we can discuss evidence in an intelligent way? Let's go right back to the beginning. Now, in the very beginning, I said to you, Joe Tisk, he happens to be a stellar expert, but he said himself, my credentials don't matter. This is how you analyze evidence. I was a skeptic. The Billy Meier case is authentic. I'll take on any skeptic, and he did. Now, you're one of those skeptics that here wants to go back and forth and tell me stories and question this, and when I try to explain, you want to interrupt it with something else. So let's go right back to if Billy Meier published 80 photos in a photo album of UFOs in 1964, tell me, Stephen, where did he get them?
Well, one theory suggests that he made the models and he took the pictures and he hung them from strings.
Stephen, where did he get them? We have a theory from Kevin Randall that he carried in a larger around rural India, out on the outskirts of Delhi. This is a guy verifiably traveling around with a knapsack, an old camera, hardly any money, working his way around. It's 1964, and he has 80 clear UFO photos. 12 still exist, and one of them is mind-boggling anyhow. It's on the site. Where did he get them? You're the skeptic. Now you tell me, not a theory, where did he get them?
He would not be the first person to fake UFO photographs.
He's in 1964. He's got 80 of them, not one or two.
Okay, so he's very diligent at faking.
So, in other words, you're saying in the face.
I'm saying it's within the realm of possibility that he faked them. I am willing to accept that the photos may be real if you are willing to accept that the photos may not be real.
No, because according to the, oh my God, I thought you were an intelligent guy.
According to a discredited so-called image analyst.
No, listen.
And who else?
Stop interrupting. According to the protocols used by military and police.
And others have analyzed the images and have said.
Oh my God.
Well, let's go to Michael Schratt. How about him? Like, he did an excellent analysis of the photos, and here's the problems that he found. Multiple grouped UFOs photographed in the same shot. UFO never photographed on the ground. These things landed. Why were they never photographed on the ground?
Why?
Object too large or disproportionate. Use of force or false perspective technique. That's an aircraft historian that's making these statements. Object perfectly centered in frame. Object positioned perfectly about the vertical axis. Object surrounded by trees or various structures to obscure suspension rig.
No, to show the scale. Listen, please don't.
What I'm saying is that for the evidence that you're saying these are real, there is counter evidence that these are fake.
He's talking.
Photos could be fake.
Hold on. He's talking 1975 photos. I'm taking you back to 64, and unless you give me, as you would have to give Joe Tisk, unless you tell me how, not your theory, not what you think he could have done, how he's running around in rural India in a dusty place, and he's made models of UFOs, and we have the photographs of this day. You tell me how he did it. Or you're going to have to admit that you don't know how he did it, and that it's more than likely that a top military expert and any other human being on the planet, following the protocols laid out in that article, will come to the same inescapable conclusion. The photos and the films are real. Now, you want to get to the 75 photos and on, there are 3 relatively new analyses detailed using state-of-the-art 21st century technology, and as I said, you're going to have those. But you better start right at the beginning, 1964. You're telling me, well, he could have this and he could have, because you're in fantasy land. You haven't gone to India. You didn't stick your finger in the goddamn hole in the tree. You haven't interviewed this man. You haven't tried to trick him. You didn't interview 14 of the people who
Hey, Michael, if somebody wants to pay my way to go interview Billy Meier.
Okay, never mind. Yeah,
you want me? Listen. I'll be very honest with you. I would love to do that. I got a wife and kids, and I have bills, and it would be very costly to go do that. Oh, I would love to do that.
I've been there 20 times. I figured out how to get there, and I don't have a salary, and I don't have a retirement pension, so I don't want to hear BS from people who are willing to impugn this man's integrity with absolutely no reason to do it.
I'm not impugning anyone's integrity. I'm asking questions. That's all we do here.
I gave you answers, and you can't answer the hard questions, and neither can any of the parasites in ufology, because they don't want this to be true. They don't want to know that what's coming to this world will be the eruption of 5 volcanoes in Italy.
Are we evolving into a doomsday cult here? Is that what's happening? Because some people have called it a UFO cult. You said that, not me.
Stephen, I'm trying to give you credit for being intelligent. You're making it difficult. When a man has information given to him in 1948, and it says after 2015 and 2016, there will be precursor earthquakes in Italy prior to the major eruptions that will take place later of Mount Etna, Mount Stromboli, Mount Vesuvius, and Campi Flegrei and Mount Marsili. And then also there will be heavy earthquake activity in Indonesia. We will have a caldera of Campi Flegrei opening up in Italy, then the caldera in northern Germany known as the Eiffel Fields, and eventually the Yellowstone in America. And it's 1948, and in 2015, 2016, those earthquakes start in Italy. Well, if you don't want to know, push that stuff aside. If you don't want to get one of your friends at NASA to tell me that they can show that Billy Meier didn't publish the stuff 30 years before they did. You see, we're dealing with a race, or somebody, if you think Meier is a hoaxer, who comes up with all this stuff that's friggin' ironclad. You can't stick a piece of paper in it when you get down to nitty-gritty. But intelligent people like you want to do BS with me. And I don't buy BS anymore, because this is too important. You said you had real questions. I gave you, in the first 5 minutes, I gave you a 12-second answer that shows that this case is real. If you have the wit and the will, you will go to Joe Tisk's article, you will run through the protocol, you will go through new analyses, you will go through the older analyses that were done at the sound labs and the photographic analyses and all the rest of it. You will read Marcel Vogel's credentials and his analysis of the metal samples. You will take the photo.
And others have said that those metal samples were ordinary earthly aluminum and copper.
Said, right. Well, hey, guess what? if the preponderance of evidence starts to show that this guy's telling the truth and that really credible scientists have put their names on the line, well, let's see if it's going to be a duel. And we know that the case is real already. We know that the case is real and authentic because we've been given them the friggin' legal protocol, the military protocol, the scientific protocol, and it establishes it in 5 minutes for anybody that can think, well, so-and-so says this photo is too good to be true. That one was wrong, and it's forced perspective. But then when we have the 21st century analysis with all the computer technology, they say, gee, real large objects.
Can I ask another question about the photos? Why did his ex-wife say that he faked the photos?
You are still married.
And now I realize that an ex-wife may not be an entirely reliable source. She may be vengeful. She may be trying to take revenge. But it's an interesting part. It's an interesting part of the story that he gets divorced. He gets divorced. She comes out and says it's all a con. It's
right.
He faked them. He faked all the
lie
photos.
Detector test saying that it's real. After she said she's seen
Hasn't his son or one of his sons also come out and sort of said
his son came out that didn't like his dad, but in the same thing he says, oh, well, that's all, the contexts are real, I just hate my dad. The other son, who is in a video as a kid along with the mother, showing like a painting drawing that he made of one of the craft that he saw. This is the problem with crap online and crap for brains, people that run around putting up their skeptical shots who didn't look into it. They didn't look into the fact that his ex-wife suddenly became wealthy after she left and started attacking Billy. Oh gosh, this is where we want to go. You're not being scientific. I'm hammering away. And you're not going to get off on this. And neither would Zen, my friend over there, or anybody else.
Yeah, he told me that I should ask you once again, who wrote the books? Where did they all come from? Was it aliens? Yeah, I think you've already answered that question, though. You said that he had these experiences and was shown these things, and then he went and wrote it down, and then he published it.
There are many books. Some are the spiritual teaching, if you will. Some are books that Meier himself authored. Some of these books that are in the spiritual teaching, Meier says that this comes to him from a higher plane. He transcribes it as it is, and he publishes it, and he doesn't change a letter of it. People can do with that what they want. I'm coming back to the thing. You and I are having this discussion because you say you want to know if the Meier case is real or not. I'm saying we've established that it's real, but you don't want to grasp that, nor do you want to grapple with it because you still want it to be something else. Why did the aliens do this? Shouldn't they done that? Why?
Yeah, and that leads me to another question. Why only Billy Meier? You have said that he's the only genuine contactee.
Okay, here's a reverse.
So answer. All the other contactees, all the other people, I will agree with you on one. One, Corey Good, is not in contact with the aliens. He's a total fraud. So we have some common ground there. You've said that anybody that claims that they're in contact with aliens, besides Billy Meier, is a fraud and a fake.
And a liar.
And there is no other genuine. Why just Billy Meier then? Why him?
You answer that. You see, you're asking me that question as if you know of some evidence to the contrary. My answer is, well, give me evidence to the contrary. I have looked at evidence over 40 years on so many things. And guess what? I don't find any. Nobody has presented one piece of verifiable extraterrestrial manufactured evidence, not a single paragraph of significant scientific information. All these people that are in contact with aliens? Really? Where is it? And then I'll start talking about why. Well, gee, I tell you what. This evidence that you have now brought to me, Stephen, let's have it compared to and tested according to the same standards that Meier's was. But I'm hearing dead air here because there are none.
Well, back to the model thing. I mean, I'm looking right now at one enlargement of one of the photos that shows what some people think is an eye screw that was used to suspend the model.
You mean the thing on top of the craft? That's because
it's a perfect loop, like you could use.
That means it's obviously, if it's a perfect loop, it's got to be an eye screw. And despite the fact that that's one of hundreds of photos, and some of them have the so-called eye screw or an antenna or whatever, that means that it's obviously a hoax because all the people that brought that up in their daytime job, if they're lucky, they're flipping goddamn burgers, and now they're experts on what an extraterrestrial craft would look like. Gosh,
so what about the wedding photo? Because a lot of people are critical of that. I won't say, I think the wedding photo looks really hokey and fake. That's right. Just my personal opinion, because you're right. I don't know what a spacecraft is supposed to look like. Maybe that's what they look like. So can you talk about the wedding photo a little bit?
Yes, as I said, and you will have the link in time for you.
I'm sorry, to be clear, it's the wedding cake photo is what it's called. If you Google wedding cake photo, you'll see the exact photo.
UFO.
Yes.
So what you're going to have, what I will be sending you, and you got to give me a day or so, because as I said, I've had a little dental surgery today and it's swimming. Okay, so what you're going to get is you're going to get the 74-page report on that object, and with all of the protocols and technologies used to analyze the wedding cake UFO, all of the stuff, and you're going to get a link to a separate book that's published about it, and you're going to get a link to the analysis of the craft going around the tree that 2 different special effects experts, Academy Award-winning special effects experts, say is not it's not a hoax, it's not a model, and it's not CGI or special effects.
Can I ask one question, because I don't seem to recall, but this particular model has a bunch of spheres around it. What are the function? This is kind of a listener question, actually. What are the function of the spheres? Because that wedding cake UFO photo has these spheres around the flying saucer. The rest of them do not have those spheres.
That's correct. I can tell you 2 things. 1, I do not know for certainty. 2, I think it's Robert Shellman from the Naval Undersea Lab, only having heard the sound of the craft and not seeing the photo, said the sound seems to be made by some type of, I think he said it was a spherical thing, for some kind of magnetic things in resonance. So he has probably the best guess. I do not know. And UFOs are irrelevant to us right now. This is what all these nice people better understand. That object called Apophis is coming towards Earth. There are changes coming on the planet that are unstoppable and are going to affect everybody. Within the next 10 years, you're not going to recognize the planet.
But just to be clear, what are you saying that then Billy Meier and these aliens can save us from this coming catastrophe?
No, because the contact with the Pleiaren was offered in 1979 to the Jimmy Carter administration, which in its wisdom turned it down. So that's bye-bye. And the Pleiaren have said, look, we're not going to extend that offer any further. The people in America are incapable of reason. They simply do not understand self-responsibility. They do not understand that we've given the warnings for decades and decades on what's happening, what's coming, the cause of it. They overpopulate this planet as well as the country of America itself to such a high degree that all of these consequences of the overpopulation manifest in the disruption to the environment. Sure, there's some things that occur naturally, but environmental destruction and climate change, that's 75% man-made now. We don't have a clue about it. Some of our scientists know. Many of them have been bought off to not say that it's real. But as Billy published, the icebergs are melting. As Billy published, the damage to the ozone took place from the atomic testing. As Billy published from these people, because Meier himself, in those early years, he himself didn't know all of that. He was shown it, and some of it he reasoned out himself.
Something jumped out at me on your site, and that is this advertisement for the Arahat Atherosata. Is that okay? I'm just going to ask this very plainly. There's some quotes, and one of them is, after several cover-to-cover readings of this book, I became able to neutralize or eliminate my migraine headaches within seconds. Isn't that illegal because you're making a medical claim that a book can cure some medical condition?
No. That is what somebody experienced, and I put their testimonial up. People, listen.
It just seems like it just seems like you're promising that if you read this book, you can cure migraines.
God, it's so hard. You want to keep on. I'm trying to explain something. If you understood that the spiritual teaching, which is Arahat Atherosata and a bunch of other things as well, lots of it for free. Now you don't have to buy the books. Explains how you use your mind in your life, in those aspects of your life. That even includes your health, your peace of mind. Not everybody's going to be able. This is a guy who applied how to think to a problem that he was having in his own friggin' head. Will everybody get some kind? No, other people learn to do other things by it. They find a way to be more effective in their occupations or in their relationships with their family, or how to deal with things in the outer world and how to improve.
Okay, no, listen, I understand. I just that
really, it's simple.
That kind of jumped out at me as like, this is a kind of a pretty out there claim. Like you could read, But listen, I want to give you the last word. I want to say this and make sure that you hear and understand me. I am sincerely thankful that you took the time to do this with me, because people said you would never come on my show. I think we had a nice talk. I'm sorry if it got a little heated at times, but we can continue to agree to disagree on some points, and I will look into this thing more. And now I want to just let you have the last word, and we have just a few minutes.
At the beginning of this program, I presented to you at least the first statement, which is pretty much sets the whole tone for the ironclad authenticity of the Meier case, how one themselves can march through the steps scientifically, legally, if you will, and determine the authenticity of the case for themselves. You will have a photo that you can play with. You'll have all sorts of things you can do. If after that you have an actual question that challenges the analysis, that first one that proves the case real, please feel free to send it. Otherwise, I'm concluding to saying I have done what you've asked, and that is actually I showed you that this has existed for a long time, that the case is ironclad. Whether you understand, agree, or not, whether that you can be anybody in the audience with what the evidence is, how it was done, blah, 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 it is what it is. And if people cannot credibly refute it, not through what they believe and not through their theories, then it stands. And finally, I'll say, since you mentioned knowing people in NASA and challenged that NASA, my claim that NASA authenticated, I stand behind that claim. And I think it's a pure matter of simple logic. If Meier published it before NASA and NASA came out, they corroborated Meier, not the other way around. The points are there. Nobody has to agree, but if you're going to tell me that after this, the Meier case isn't real and his evidence isn't real, then either prove it, folks, or don't even bother. And if you have any evidence that all of the frauds, phonies, liars, charlatans, and cheats that I've called out by name, from Nick Pope to Richard Dolan, Stephen Greer, Michael Sala, Paula, all of them, I'll say it to their face. And none of them will raise their voice, because they know as soon as they try to address what I've said, people go to the Meier case and realize that not a one of those clowns who've been misleading them for years or decades has one piece of evidence. And that speaks pretty poorly for people who believe that load of crap. And you're not being abducted by aliens. If anything, you're being messed with by our secret military, and we can do other things than that.
Well, Michael, we've run out the clock. I want to thank you and everyone else for joining us tonight. Until next time, folks, my name is Stephen Cambion, reminding you that it's better to get hurt by the truth than comforted by a lie. Good night, folks.